Welcome to Sewing with Joy Designs. This is the third video in the series. We previously sewed the Lauren doll dress and the Hampstead shorts. For this third video, we have a little surprise. I'll be sewing up the brand new Lilydale dress from Little Lizard King. I got asked to test this pattern, and so I thought it would be fun to show you sewing it up. I have all of my pieces cut out. This is for dress and the jacket pieces. I'm going to start with the bodice pieces on the dress. We'll start with a front bodice piece and the back bodice pieces. Line these up, and we're going to sew the shoulder seams. And we'll do the same with these lining pieces. With our shoulder seams sewn, we can now press them and then sew these two pieces together. This is my lining. So I'm going to press the shoulder seams to the front, and on the main piece we'll press them towards the back. Now I can take our front bodice piece and lay the back bodice piece on top. Now I'm going to sew along this back straight edge around the neck and down here. We have that all sewn. Now I'm going to use some pinking shears. I have a rotary blade that has a pinking blade, and I'm going to trim all of this seam allowance, making sure that I don't get any of the stitching. With that all trimmed, we're going to turn it right side out and press it. I like to make sure that these corners are nice and poked out. If your fabric is on the thinner side, now would be a good time to add interfacing for the back buttons. The instructions have you sew the two side seams together next. I want to enclose the sleeve seam within the bodice, so I'm going to wait on closing up the sides. So I'll just set this aside for now. I'm going to move on to the our elastic. I'm using 1/2 inch single fold bias tape for the casings. We're going to start with our ties. Press them right sides together, right down the middle. Open them up and fold the edges to meet right in the middle. Now we're going to open it all up, press the ends, just one end, and then we will refold it to meet. We'll press down the center again. So you should end up with a 1/4 of an inch wide tie. It's a little bit small and fiddly, but if you just take it a little bit at a time. Now I'm going to press the rest of these, and then we're going to top stitch down this edge. Okay, here's all of our completed ties. I'm going to give them all a little press just to help straighten them out. Okay, we'll set those aside. Now we're going to take our front jacket pieces. So we have one side that's all folded up and one side where the end is still raw. We're going to take that and put it right below the marking. And I'm going to use clips to hold them in place. And then we're going to baste all of these in place with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, here's all of our ties basted in place. When I baste something this tiny in place, I still use a 2.5 millimeter seam, or 2.5 millimeter stitch, because I feel like the 5 millimeters barely catches it at all. So I still sew with my normal length. Now we're going to do the shoulder seams, and I'm not going to do the side seams because we'll do that after we've enclosed them. So we'll do this with the main fabric and then also with our lining fabric. Okay, we've got all these sewn, just like with our dress bodice pieces. The lining gets pressed towards the front and the main gets pressed towards the back. With the pattern instructions, we would have this sewn together already, but since I'm leaving that open, it's going to look a little bit different than the instructions, but the result is going to be the exact same, except that this is going to be enclosed. So we're going to take one of our main pieces and the matching lining piece, and we're going to line them up just like this, right sides together. We're going to sew along this bottom edge, up around the neckline, down and over to here. So we'll have the side seams and the arm side and this other side seam open. We're going to do that for both sides. Make sure that your ties are laying straight and also staying out of the way so they don't end up sewn in a seam where they're not supposed to be. Got this all sewn. I'm going to use my pinking shears again to give it a trim. With that all trimmed up, we can turn them right side out. Out our corners and our curve. The pinking shears have the added benefit of clipping the corners so that these rounded edges lay really nicely. I did this hand embroidered before. This is Madeira embroidery, also from Little Lizard King. I just used the collar embroidery and rotated it so that it was at an angle that I liked. I think these corners could use just an additional little poking out. This is the inside of my tube turner. Has a nice rounded point for poking out corners. There's one half. Oh, that's so cute. Okay, let's do the other side. There's the other half of our jacket. We'll set this aside for now with our main dress bodice, and we're going to work on the sleeves. To get the sleeves ready to attach, we are going to gather from one point to the other point. For sleeves, I do a 1/4 of an inch and 3/8 of an inch basting stitch. So 5 millimeters. Here's our basting done. We have nice long tails on both ends. Now we are going to attach our sleeves and enclose them in the bodice. So to do this, we're going to take our main bodice and we're going to clip this to this very top, the main fabric of our dress bodice. So we're not clipping it to the lining. I'm just going to do one at the shoulder seam and then one over here on the side seams. Turn this around. So now we have our jacket piece clipped to the main piece of our dress bodice, and this is the lining, which is not clipped in. Now we're going to take one of our sleeve pieces. We're going to go right sides together. I'm going to line up these side seams here, one here. I should have marked my centers of this sleeve first. Okay, let's find the sleeve center really quick. We can line up the center of the sleeve with this shoulder seam. I like to use a pen because it's easier to get the basting stitches to slide past. Now we'll start on one side. We're just going to match it up until we get to the start of these basting stitches, and we'll put a pin in right there. Do the same on the other side till we get to the basting stitches, pin in. We're going to take our 2 basting threads and we're going to pull them up, and then I wrap them around the pin a couple times to hold it in place. Do the same on the other side. These should be pretty tight gathers, so it should be pretty easy to get them nice and even across there. Okay, so we've got our gathers all in place. We're going to take our sleeve and we're going to roll it up. This is the burrito method for sleeves. Nice and tight. Now this bodice lining is going to wrap around just like this. Now we can match our side seam. I leave that pin in place and then just clip over the top of it. And we'll line up our side seams over here. Add that to the clip. Add this one to the clip. Now we're going to sew along the top of this sleeve, but we're not going all the way to the edges. We're going to start about 2 inches in. Make sure that your sleeve isn't getting caught. Your rolled up sleeve isn't getting caught in the seam. I'm going to place a clip right where I want to start sewing. And then on the other side, we're going to stop again about 2 inches from the end. So I'm going to clip right there. Now I'm going to sew from this clip to this clip with a 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. Going nice and slow and making sure that the rolled up sleeve stays out of the way. I have sewn that. You're going to just check and make sure that there aren't any places where it's tucked up. If you're having a hard time keeping all of this in place, you can baste the sleeve to the main bodice piece before you bring this lining up. If I end up with any tucks, I'll just unpick, like if I had a tuck right here, I would unpick just that section and then re-sew and overlap a back stitch over the previous sewn line. Okay, I'm going to take those clips out. I'm going to very carefully use my pinking shears and trim this. It's really thick, a lot of layers. Now we're going to turn this right sides out. And you want to turn it, you've got this side where the back is, and you've got this continuous front. We're turning the back this way, be less fabric. This is a little bit trickier than when there isn't a jacket, but this is a 12-month size and it's still really doable. Just take it slow and be gentle on your fabric. There is the top of our sleeve all sewn in place. You can take out these basting threads. Okay, I am going to attach the other sleeve now in the same way, and then we'll do all the side seams. Both sleeves are now attached, so now we can do the side seams. I'm going to start with the sleeve side seams. I'm going to do French seams, so I'm starting wrong sides together. I'll do these French seams and then we'll do the side seams of the bodices. Here's our French seams on our sleeves done. The instructions have you attach the ruffle and the casing to the end of this sleeve flat. So if you're doing it that way, make sure to do that before you sew the side seams of the sleeves. I want to do that part in the round, so that's why I did the side seam first before doing the ruffle and the casing at the end. Okay, so now we're going to do the side seams of the bodice. The bodice is going to be fully enclosed, so we aren't doing French seams on the bodice. Let's start with the dress first, and then we'll do the jacket. Just gonna move the jacket out of the way. Here's the side seams for just the dress bodice. So we're gonna take this front one and this back one, and we're gonna line those up. And we're just doing a regular 1/2 inch seam allowance. Doesn't need to be French. And then this will leave you with these lining pieces. So we'll line those up and sew those. I like to clip all of these to keep them straight as I move them to the sewing machine. You can do the same on this other side. Main pieces, if your lining is different, it makes it a little bit easier to keep track of which one's the main and the lining. I'm going to sew all of these, and then we'll do the side seams of the jacket. We've got all of our bodice seams sewn, and just give them all a press open. There's our dress bodice seams all done. Back of the dress bodice, here's the front. Now we can do the side seams on the jacket. We already have the bottom sewn, so it's going to be a little bit fiddly in the machine, but still definitely possible. We're going to line up our lining pieces. This is the arm side right here. We're going to line up the seams where the front or the main and the lining meet, and then we're going to clip this main piece the other side of the arm side. So you're going to sew here and down here. You'll have to sew this part first and then kind of shift it around to sew this second half. And we'll do that on both sides. If you don't want to enclose your sleeves in the bodice, the instructions in the pattern are really great. Just follow those. It should look the same from the outside. It's just a matter of personal preference, and I like to have all of everything enclosed inside. I think it makes it more durable, and then there's not a shoulder seam that can be itchy for some kids. So that's why I do it this way. So we have this section sewn. Just going to pop it out. I find it easier to press it open once I've already straightened it out. I just kind of finger press it first to get the seams to lie the way that I want them to. So open, and then press it with my iron. That's the side seam of our jacket. Now we are almost done with enclosing this sleeve. We just have this bottom of the arm side to do. What we're going to do is we're going to turn the sleeves right sides out. These pieces, we're going to hold the jacket and the main dress bodice piece together with a clip. We're going to turn that open like this. So now this is the lining of our dress bodice. This is the sleeve. We'll line up the seams, and we'll line up the seams with our main dress bodice and the jacket pieces. So all of those seams are going to get lined up just like that. So our sleeve is still sandwiched between the main and the lining of the dress. You can see over here, this is where we stopped sewing the sleeve, and this side is where we stopped sewing the sleeve. So we're going to start right where we stopped and sew right along here. Similar to when we did the underseam of the jacket, you'll want to go nice and slow and sew this first half, and then maneuver things around to sew this second half. We've got that sewn. Make sure there aren't any tucks in it. And then we're going to really carefully trim the seam allowance, making sure you don't trim anything else. I think this part would be easier with actual scissor pinking shears. This is what I'm going with. I just do it a little bit at a time, making sure that nothing else is tucked up in the way. Now we can turn everything right sides out. Now from the outside, our sleeve is all done. Inside, everything is nicely enclosed within this the seam. That's what the inside of our sleeve looks like. I think this is also a really great way to sew sleeves if you don't own a serger and can't finish the seams that way. I think it's a great way to do it. Let's do the bottom of the sleeves now. Okay, we have our sleeve ruffles. We're gonna fold these in half, wrong sides together, give them a little press. I think the bottom of these sleeves is so fun. I love the way that it gets all ruffly, but there's no gathering, and everything is enclosed. I really like it. And we have our casing. Since the sleeve is already sewn into a circle, we need to sew these pieces all into a circle as well. So we'll unfold them, and we're just gonna line up the short ends and sew the 1/2 inch seam allowance that we would have sewn all together if we did the sleeves flat. So I'll get all these sewn together, and then we'll work on the sleeves. Got all of our pieces now. We can press the seams open. So we start by placing our casing. Make sure that you refold along that memory crease. Now we're going to place it on the right sides of the sleeve. Match up the those seams, and then it should fit on the sleeve just right. Now we'll take one of our casings, and we're going to put this on the right sides together as well. So now the ruffle is enclosed in the casing. If you're using bias tape, make sure to just unfold the edge. Now we're going to sew all of this together with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. We'll do that on both sleeves. With that sewn, we fold this so that the ruffle edge is out, and we're going to refold along this top edge. And we're gonna sew, just top stitch right along the top of this casing. Since we did it in the round, we need to leave a little bit of space to get our elastic in. So we've got our casing all sewn with the opening there. Before I put the elastic in, I like to put a little mark on the two ends to make sure that it doesn't get twisted in there. And I can tell for sure that I've got the right side when it comes through. I'm gonna put my bodkin on one side, start threading it, and then I like to put a clip on the other side to make sure that the elastic doesn't get pulled into the casing. Now, you can see my mark there, mark here. So now those are both on the same side. And we can overlap the ends of this and sew that in place. Pin it for now while I do the other one. I'm gonna tight circle like this that a safety pin might actually be easier than this bodkin. Pull these out, distribute all the elastic, and just kind of feel and make sure that it didn't get twisted at all. Now we're going to finish top stitching this little bit that we left open. That is the top of our dress and jacket all done. Distribute those elastics evenly. Let's do our skirt now. Start with, I'm going to do the ruffle option, which makes it look like a double skirt, but it's not, which I think is fancy. Cool. Doing French seams again. We're just going to sew our side seams of our skirt, and at the same time I'm also going to sew all of my ruffle pieces together into one long tube using French seams. We've got all of our side seams sewn together. We've got our ruffle in one long piece. I'm going to set that aside for now while I do the skirt placket. You're going to find the center back and kind of do a light memory crease. Now we are going to cut down 2.5 inches from the top. 2.5 inches right down that memory crease. Mark that. I do my plackets a little bit different than the instructions, just personal preference. Cut down just like that. Now I'm going to be sewing the placket to this in a little V shape. So I'm going to start about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. You can mark this or you can just eyeball it. And then I'm going to sew from that 1/4 of an inch right down to that point, pivot, and then sew up to this 1/4 of an inch mark up there. That's how I'm sewing the placket on. So just place it right sides together. There is going to be a little bit of an overhang. I like to start with maybe 1/2 inch overhang at the top here. The placket is another place where you're going to want to sew the first half, leave your needle in, and then readjust to sew the second half. So here is our placket. We're going to fold this about 3/4 of an inch to the wrong side. Press. And then we're going to fold it again. And we want the edge to be just over our sewing line. Now we're going to top stitch this in place. Just along here and just barely, it should just barely be overlapping your sewing line from before. Here is our placket. Now we are going to, we can trim off this excess bit. Now we want to clip it so that it is going the right way. The one on the left gets folded towards the skirt, and then the one on the right stays away from the skirt so that it overlaps, just like that. The next thing we're going to do is putting in the basting stitches on the top of this skirt and on this ruffle. The ruffle is going to be folded in half, wrong sides together first, just like this, and we'll baste the two raw edges together as we put in, so the gathering stitches are going through both raw edges, and our bottom edge will be just folded. I've got all of the gathering put in place. I definitely should have pressed this ruffle piece before I gathered it. It would have been a lot easier. That's what the instructions say to do. I just forgot to do it. When I put in my gathering stitches for skirts and ruffles, I do 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, and 5/8 of an inch. I think that having the 3 basting stitches really helps to make it easier to gather it evenly, and also if it makes it stronger, you're less likely to have a thread break, and if one breaks, you still have 2 that you can work with. There's lots of ways to gather, but that's just the way that I like to gather. We are going to fold the bottom edge of this skirt 1.5 inches up towards the wrong side. To make it easier, I like to mark where I'm going to. So if I'm folding up 1.5 inches, I'm going to mark 3 inches up, double what I should be folding along the inside edge. I'm going to do that on both sides. When I fold this up to meet this 3-inch line, this is 1.5 inches. So I can just bring edge right up to my marked line. I find that a really easy way to get my hems the right size and even across the whole skirt. Now that we have that bottom edge pressed, we're going to unfold it, and we're going to attach the ruffle to the bottom of this skirt. I like to find centers and 1/4 points and match all of those up. So your ruffle's going to have 4 seams on it. If you don't want to have a seam right in the middle, instead of matching the seam with your center point, you can match it with a 1/4 point. So we've already found our center. So if we match that center with the side seam, that's going to give us one of our 1/4 points. Put your seams on these offset 1/4 points, and then you won't have a ruffle seam right down the middle. If you do put it right down the middle, nobody's going to notice, but it can be a nicer way to do it if you want to avoid a seam right down the front. I'm going to get this ruffle all matched up and gathered. Okay, I've got the ruffle all attached, or all gathered up to match the skirt. As I sew this, I'm sewing with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I want it to be enclosed. I like the ruffle to be enclosed. So to do that, I'm going to use some bias tape, and I am going to place the bias tape so that this folded edge right here, that's about 1/4 of an inch in, is going to be right over my sewing line. I'm going to start with it folded back like this at the beginning, and then when I get around to the other side, I'm going to overlap it a little bit. So come around and it'll overlap just like this. So we'll sew till about there, and that's what the beginning and the end will look like. I have the ruffle all sewn on, and I have the bias tape attached. You can see here how my stitching line is 1/2 inch from the edge of the ruffle and the skirt, and it's sewn right along this 1/4 of an inch fold line of the bias tape. And here's my start and my beginning. I have it folded over and then overlapped when I got to the end. So when it gets folded up, it will, you won't have any raw edges on the edge. So now the next thing is going to be to trim it. I like to trim it using my serger. I just take off about 1/4 of an inch, but you could also use a rotary blade or scissors. I just find the serger quick and easy. Here it is all trimmed up. Now, when we pull this up, it will easily cover our seam. Instead of just pulling it straight up like this and sewing it, we're going to refold along this memory crease that we made. Fold right along that memory crease. We will have it folded here. The ruffle is going to be coming down, and this is going up. So it's kind of a lot to get going the right direction, but from the right side, this is how you want it to look. This is the skirt coming down, and then we have our fold and our ruffle facing downward. You could add hem tape to keep this in place. I think that could be a really good idea, or you could pin it, or just Go slowly, making sure that you are folding right along that edge. And our bias tape is going to end up right along this marked line that we made earlier. Edge of the bias tape is right along that line. So now we're just going to top stitch right along the edge of this bias tape, and that will finish off our ruffle. Here it is with the ruffle sewn, bias tape in place. I'm going to give this another press to make sure that this folded edge stays really crisp. Okay, there is the bottom of our skirt done. I love this skirt. I think it's so fun. I think it's a great way to get the look of a double skirt without having to have all the fabric and the layers of a double skirt. So now all that's left is to attach our skirt to our bodice. So I'm going to do the same thing where I mark the quarter points and the 1/8 points and match it up with this to enclose the bodice or the waist seam. I'm going to attach it just to this main piece, and then after it's sewn on to the main piece, I'm going to hand stitch down the lining. I've gathered the skirt to the bodice now. When I put my gathering stitches in, I put them all the way to the edge of the placket, but when I gather it, I leave this placket ungathered. Since it's thicker, that happens pretty easily. It just naturally stays ungathered. And same on this side. So you want the gathers to start right after, but I find it easier to have them start right after if the basting threads go all the way to the edge. Now we can just sew this like normal with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's all sewn on now. I'm going to take out the basting threads. I like to save these to do my hand stitching with. We'll also have threads from the other side. The ones that are from the front that get all bent, I don't reuse those. Now we're going to bring the lining down. We're going to fold it 1/2 inch to meet. So our folded edge now is right along that sewing line. The way that I do my hand stitching, I have my thread folded in 1/2 so that I have 2 strands. I take a tiny stitch from the skirt, just a couple threads wide, and then I go right back in where I came out and follow along the fold for 1/4 to 3/8 inch. And then I'm going to take a tiny stitch from the skirt right where I came out. And I'll just continue doing that all the way around the waist seam. Here is our waist seam all enclosed. That finishes up the main sewing for the dress. Now we can just do the buttons. I'm going to do snaps on the dress and then buttons on the jacket overlay. Just going to mark where I want the snaps to be, and then I'm going to mark for the buttonholes. So this is going to be the start of all of my buttonholes. I'm just going to use my sewing machine to sew the buttonholes. Sometimes I do them by hand and sometimes I do them with machine. This time I'm going to do them with the machine. Here's our completed look with the Lilydale dress, the Hampstead shorts, and the Lauren Doll dress. I am so pleased with how this all turned out. I think they're a great combination of patterns. I used the Madeira hand embroidery on this jacket to match the flowers on the dress. I think this is a perfect fall transitional outfit. Thanks so much for sewing with me. See you in the next one. Bye.